make sure that we're staying curious, make sure that we're asking questions. And remember also, thought about this a while back that curiosity is not meant to be a solo sport.
Our featured speaker today is the founder of Starfish Strength, a personal training and healthy lifestyle coaching business. She is also the co-organizer of the Founders Voyage community Discord and podcast. In both roles, she is passionate about helping others find the inspiration and information they need to feel and live better on all levels. And finally, Nancy is a dear, dear friend of mine. It is a great pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thanks so much for taking the time to share your journey with us.
Thanks for doing this with me. This is an exciting adventure, too.
Absolutely. Now, you always like to kick off interviews with a particular question, and so I
If
thought
you
I'd
don't
take
have to do that.
I thought I'd take a leaf from your book and start with that. Why don't you tell us about some of the foundational experiences that you feel shape the direction your life has taken you?
Okay, I'm also going to stop looking at the script document because I want this to be more real. This is something I've thought about because I do ask a lot of people this. And in some ways, I a little bit hate part of my answer to that. So, part of my answer is my dad. He was an entertainer, which means that he dressed up as a clown and a medieval character. And we went to festivals, and I was the sidekick clown or medieval kid. I'm not sure we ever quite decided what we called us, but we came out like before the show started, or we did what we called like a walk around, and did little magic tricks for people. I was terrified, but I did learn a lot about making phone calls, doing prospecting, stuffing mailers. I knew what he got paid. So I think I was more intricately involved at a very young age than a lot of people might. I don't know. I think a lot of people are intricately involved in their family's business. So that was our family business. So I would say that was my exposure to entrepreneurship. And then the other thing I would say is because when I went to boot camp, it kind of felt like this again to me was the school that I went to as a kid was inner city, K through third grade. And I felt like it was the most magical experience. I don't think that that is everyone's experience going to public school, but I felt like there are people that speak all different languages, that eat all different things for lunch. This is fascinating and I love it. And I feel like I'm still that person. So I would list that as my other experience.
That's brilliant. I do think it's something that's very uncommon to expose your kids early on to like the realities of sort of businesses and how they function and like how much she was making and things like that. That's, I think, a really uncommon experience. How do you think that's shifted your view compared to other people?
I think having to take on a lot of responsibility at an early age was beneficial in a lot of ways. Probably also served to make me anxious, but it did help me ask a lot of questions because clearly there was a lot to know. So I think it probably nurtured my curiosity. I wish I could say it made me like the perfect financial planner. I think it more made me realize that like it's actually really hard to make money with a business.
That's very fair. I think a lot of people would have learned the same things. It is a fairly unique business to have worked on from such a young age. I imagine there's cool parts to it and a variety of things in that experience.
I was a little jealous of the other kids that weren't working. I will say that.
Yeah.
I think you do. My dad was definitely like a person that valued process. And even if he didn't have the right process, like thinking about, oh, there is a process. And, I've had to re examine for myself, like, okay, maybe you need to rethink your process. But, just knowing how to kind of problem solve, I think from an early age has been very helpful. And like a very random skill that I have that's helped us in our moves is being able to pack a lot of things into a very small space. That was necessary, when we were going to go to some of his shows and go places as a large family.
I'm just imagining you like packing a clown car full of everything you own.
It's not really a clown car, it's Dodge Ram van. So
Okay.
it did have our name and phone number on it, but it wasn't as cute as probably what you're picturing.
Okay. Very fair. Very fair.
Not something you want to be dropped off in high school in.
No, probably not the coolest experience.
No.
Now, you've worked in quite a wide variety of different areas, I believe. I know you've done
Mhm.
some sales work. I think you worked with some IT stuff for a while. Can you just take us through your journey to get to the amazing starfish strength?
I think that's very kind of you to say. Honestly, the common thread that I've realized is that I really thrived in customer facing roles. And I was able to convince people that I was passionate about learning what I did need to know. What I didn't already know, I could convince some people in an interview that I was willing to work to do that. So, because I started off working in a grocery store, I guess I would say I started off, babysitting multiple families and then working in a grocery store while continuing to babysit and then working at a credit union. And then I would say at the credit union, I realized, I still have a very good friend that still works at that credit union that made a career there. And I think that was a big turning point for me. I realized, as I said to you before, like, I don't think I can just live in this area my whole life. That's not who I am, who I'm meant to be. That's how I felt about it. I still love all of you who still live there. I needed to do something else. So I started looking into going back to school. I had dropped out of college and I wound up going to photography school. I want to say it led me to Michigan, but not directly. I basically wanted to move to San Francisco with some friends, and it wasn't going to happen. It sounded like this magical dreamland that a couple of our professors had come from. And so instead, I took a room with a friend from high school who was living with her friends from college in Michigan, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, just because I was like, all right, well, I need to pivot really quick because I had these plans to move and this didn't work out. So I moved to Michigan and it was right before the recession here. So it wasn't the best timing. Young 20 something me wasn't really worried about that, but I was once I was having trouble finding work. It also wasn't like the thriving metropolis, as far as photography work goes. Some of my friends moved to New York City. So I worked in a photo lab and then I also worked at a YMCA. And then I just started walking into studios because mailing them my resume was doing nothing. And then one day I walked into a studio and she wanted to see my portfolio and we started talking and we got along really well. And she hired me. I think the first thing she hired me for was doing an Easter shoot with kids. I wound up working for her for a long time. And then I met Brian and we got engaged and I got laid off the next day, in line with the recession. So this is also, I have to do a video on this, unfortunately, how I gained the weight. I was very depressed that we were going through like this exciting chapter of our journey together. And I just lost what I considered my dream job at the time. So I worked in childcare again, making less than I had at the grocery store, which, at 16, which is very humbling. And then, I'm really fast forwarding through a lot of stuff, obviously, but we moved to New Hampshire because Brian got a job there. And I had done my thing of applying for all these jobs that I was underqualified for. And so one of them called me when we were in New Hampshire and they were like, well, when are you moving? When can you come for an interview? And I'm like, oh, I'm here. I was still putting in applications. So I first sold telephone book ads, which I had never done before, and SEO at the time, which now when people try to sell it to me, I'm like, okay, so which people are like I was and have very little idea what they're talking about, but actually want to help me. And which, so anyway, I did not have an idea of what I was actually selling them, but I did want to help them. One of my friends from that job left and she said, I really like this place, PC Connection, you should apply there. And so I wound up applying and getting a job. And again, I was highly underqualified to sell IT solutions to people, but I could definitely talk to people and make them, if their data storage was on fire, I would be there for them and get them connected with the right engineer. So I had that job for a long time. And then we decided mutually, Brian and I, after experiencing one too many snowstorms one January, that we really needed to move. So we started applying for jobs for both of us. And at this point, he actually had gone through graduate school. So he was the better person for me to be applying for jobs that, maybe he was qualified for, maybe not. But so eventually he got a job that helped us move. And we were in North Carolina for 6 months while he was kind of going through the first stage of that. And that was really cool. I never lived in that section of the country before. And then that moved us out to California. So I took that opportunity to change careers. And I took way too long, arguably, but I got my American Council on Exercise personal training certification. Since then I have quite a few other certifications, but I started talking to the first gym that I worked for when I was in North Carolina. And I did interview at a whole bunch of others. What really drove that, I would say, is again, the people that were there. The manager I was going to have said, we have a vet population. We have some really young guys from the Iraq war that come in with injuries that like we don't understand, that we have to help. How does that make you feel? We have some older people, a lot of older people in this community. I think some people get into this career because they think they're going to work with people exactly like them. And so that feeling from kindergarten kind of came back. I was like, I would love to work with all kinds of different people. So that was a really shaping experience. For a while, I tried to work at another small gym that was focused on weight loss because, it was something that I could really empathize with. But eventually, the driving during rush hour to teach classes became too much. And I didn't think that I would choose personal training, but I did just because I could have that intimate connection with people and really, really help them. I did wind up teaching some group classes at that gym, but it was mostly personal training. And then lockdown hit. So literally, we were all together in Boston in March 2020. And then I went back to my aunt's house that night and I got a call that our gym was shutting down and that I was laid off. And we really didn't know what the future would hold. I was definitely kind of in denial for a while, I think. I thought, probably everybody was like, this is just going to be a couple weeks. There's no way we're shutting down everything. So unfortunately, the company I was working for was, I guess, if I had really looked into it, I probably could have found evidence earlier, but they were on the verge of bankruptcy. So the way they handled things was to overcharge some of my clients and ask me if I wanted to do all kinds of stuff, teach classes for them online. And I said yes to everything. I didn't get hired for any of that. I was still laid off. And my clients are telling me that they're getting billed for stuff that they shouldn't be getting billed for. So again, I took way too much time. I was pretty upset. I read a lot of books. I would say this was kind of my midlife crisis time. And my clients and Brian kept saying, like, you really need to do something. Like, you need to do something online. You need to. I wasn't ready to pivot. I do regret that. Like, I look back at it now and like, I did. I read like a million books. I read, Start with Why. I really thought about like, who am I away from all of my roles? I was leading the Fit for Girls exercise program, which I absolutely loved, and that shut down. So, anyway, it was a very defining moment for me. And so, when I started Starfish Strength, I know I'm getting rambly here, but I knew that it was what people wanted because they were asking for it and felt like I actually got the opportunity to test it with them. So the way I made it up to my clients I'd been overcharged was to give them some free sessions so I could test this for myself and become a believer. I wasn't at first, but now, like, I've realized it gives people so much more ownership to be able to do something in their own space. And they're so much more likely to go and repeat it. Like, I always loved going to a gym, and that was the hardest part for me. But if your gym is right there and you just did this yesterday, you're so much more likely to go repeat it. That was one of the benefits that I found. And sorry for the long-winded answer. I knew I was gonna.
Not at all. No problem at all. I think you've had a long journey. You've done a ton of things. You've like experimented and pivoted, and you've gone through some tough times and come out stronger at the end. I've never heard of a midlife crisis where someone reads books as their expression of the midlife crisis. I think it's a lot better than buying a car you can't afford, blowing up your life. So
Well, I
I
didn't
think
have
that
money to do that, but I did make, I don't know if anyone else will relate to this, but I was like, okay, so we could start eating, which is what we did last time we got laid off, or we could start drinking, which is what everyone else is doing. So I decided not to do either of those things.
good move. Very good move. Can you take us through starfish strength? What, like you said, roughly what it is, but can you tell us about like what to you is sort of the key value proposition that you offer that others don't?
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, it's my fun little alliteration. I liked learning that. And actually, before this existed, I don't know if you remember, but at boot camp, I went around with a card to every person. This is how I tracked who I met, that talked about like my little starfish story. So starfish can regenerate a limb that is longer and possibly stronger, or better at doing certain tasks than his other limbs. And I really liked that because I was a kid who was always getting hurt, and bouncing back from injuries was like a big part of my story before I even gained weight. I wanted, a name that kind of like reflected who I am a little bit. It's a personal training and mindset coaching business. And I say that because I found in personal training that people, some of them really need a lot of hand holding. Some of them are only motivated to work out when we work together, and that's okay. Our grander goals for ourselves, like, really rely on some of our foundational habits, and some of those are wellness habits. So I wanted to start helping people see that link that I've seen for a long time, even though I do train clients, on the side between once and 3 times a week, depending on their goals and their motivation to work out and do their nutrition on their own. I started the YouTube channel, and I've been pretty persistent about it because I really want people to be able to find the information that they need to help them get through some of the barriers, to practicing their healthy habits. Because I don't know if you're familiar with like the trans theoretical model of behavior change, but basically it talks about it starts pre-contemplation. So in pre-contemplation, you're like, and I remember doing this with my weight loss. I was like, I want to exercise right now. I wish I wanted to exercise right now because I know it would help me. I know it would help my back pain, but I just don't want to, but I want to. And then you get into contemplation where you're like, I kind of want to. How much do I really want to look into the possibility? And then you get into preparation where, you're like, I bought a gym membership. So I still need to go, but I bought a gym membership. And when you really get into action, like they say, that is more like you're practicing that habit, and then you get into maintenance. But at any point in there, you can go to regression, and it can bounce you back 1 step or 2 steps. So I want to help people with those things. And I don't feel like most gyms, I mean, it's not really their job. They're there to be there for people who want to exercise. They're not there necessarily to be like, you're going through grief right now. Like, how can we make this more sustainable for you while you're taking care of your ailing aunt? That's why I think what I do is unique, because I want to be that problem solver that helps people figure out how to do this through real life.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I also think your point about habits is important because I think I've read in times of stress, you don't rise to your ambitions, you fall to your habits. Right? If you can build up your
Man, I've done
habits
that a
so that
lot.
Me too. Absolutely. If you can build up positive habits in your life, then even in, downturns, negative scenarios, you'll still be able to continue those positive habits, right? Because it feels strange to not do things that are part of your habit, right? So it takes more effort. So I think helping people to build those healthy habits and work on themselves and get an understanding of like if someone's, differently abled, helping them be able to do the kinds of healthy habits that they need, but maybe aren't catered to by other places like gyms, for example. I think that's all really, really good and really, really powerful.
I think you make a good point in making sure that you realize the benefits that your healthy habits are giving you, because for a lot of people, like exercise is not about losing a whole bunch of weight. I mean, it hasn't been for me lately. It's been much more about like how it makes me feel physically, mentally, and emotionally, even more importantly at this point. And then making sure you do fall to your habits in time of stress and making sure that those don't become the things that you start abusing too. Because unfortunately, I've done that on occasion as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code Voyage. That's vidops.io, referral code Voyage. Now back to the show.
Now, Giovanni did have a question. What was the most exciting part among your many jobs?
I mean, I have to say it's what I do now because at the end of the day, like, I mean, I have Brian and for him, but like, I realize that a lot of this is like, there's no corporation to hide behind, like it's me that I hide behind. I think learning to separate myself as a human from my brand has been kind of an exciting journey too. I know it's something we've asked people on occasion, but I had a lot of difficulty doing that in the beginning. So it's definitely this because I get to problem solve and I get to continue to learn about something I'm really passionate about. And science is always changing. There's always more to know. And I really do love that. Thank you for the question.
That's really good. And the way that you integrate the science of, behavior change as well as of being healthy into your work, I think is super important. And it is something that is, as you say, constantly changing. It also feels like it's such how do I say this? Like such a mess of different messages are sent out throughout the internet in regards to health and fitness and taking care of yourself. How do you recommend to other people and how do you yourself sort of sieve through all that to find the golden nuggets, so to speak?
That is a really good question. There's not an easy answer, but I am really tempted to lead off with something that my 14-year-old niece wisely said to me about politics on TikTok, realizing that a lot of it is opinion. So for me, I know that not everyone has the patience to go and look up the studies that are being referenced in some articles. And obviously, if it is just opinion, if it's just a guy or a gal or someone just saying something, when I just say things in videos, I'm a lot self conscious that some people will just take my word for it. I thought about there were a couple videos where I put a long list of articles in there and, maybe I should start doing that again. But I realized that no one is looking at that. That is scary. So I think though, if someone references a study and you're going to hold that and you're going to tell 10 friends about it, understanding where it came from is pretty important. I get frustrated more than that, Brian knows this, like if I see something taken out of context, one of the things I find really interesting is so the New York Times is, good at posting. I'll just say articles on health and fitness because that's mainly what I'm referencing. They have like a nice little tagline, and there is research in them. However, you have to pay for a subscription, so, if you go in the Facebook comments, there's a whole bunch of people that clearly haven't read the article that are just shooting off opinions. I just need to be really careful about what is opinion and then what is like that the headline is an opinion, right? That's how they decided that it was most marketable. It's not necessarily the most important takeaway from the study. So I think just remembering that, you know, information is entertainment now and looking at it through that lens and trying to sort for yourself like, okay, it's okay that I'm being entertained by this, but that doesn't mean that this is the most important thing for me to know.
Absolutely. And the titles of articles are entirely designed to get you to click.
I mean, I'm learning to do that more so and be less clinical with my YouTube titles, but there's part of me that really fights and says this is not accurate. I'm not going to go that far with it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But it is how the system is designed, like, and it is designed to attract attention. So if you think your message is important for people to see, then you have to play that game of like trying to get more people to see it.
I think though, this is also like close friend has been saying this to me about money in politics. Well, you have to take money from these entities to play the game, right? And I said, well, as long as everyone believes that, you're right. So I am for myself trying to ride that line between making sure that I have integrity about this and also still preserving that entertainment factor that people are wanting. I'm shamelessly using my puppy for entertainment, but I'm still going to make sure that this is factual.
Yeah,
That's my balance.
very fair. Very fair. Now, someone in the audience who you may or may not know wants to ask a question. His name is
Okay.
Brian Nash.
Yeah, so actually, you kind of almost perfectly transitioned to the question I wanted to ask you, Nancy. So, you and I obviously know about the relationship that we have with our pets, Max and obviously PD beforehand. I know just how much footage you have, and I know just how much you enjoy including them in your videos. Let's take this a little step further, right? How do you kind of use them, not just as a prop, right? Because that could be certainly a thing, but how can you use them as a teaching tool to help get across the ideas that you're trying to get through about resilience, things of that nature? How are you able to kind of use them as a unique but fun way to help reach clients?
I think I would say first that this is what I like looking at before I go to bed at night. This is how I detox the brain from all the political stuff and all the tough stuff that you see is we watch animal videos, and so I'm definitely appealing to that part of people. I think making this feel more approachable and fun by just having them be part of it. And also, I mean, the things, I was literally editing a video last night where Max is like barking in the middle of it, like, life is full of distractions. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You don't have to be, trying to film a video in silence to feel like you're being pulled in 10 different directions. So I think showing that in some regard in my way is with my pets because, they're part of our family. And then the other part is Petey bounced back from so many things. And I do have footage of him coming back from his leg surgery. And I definitely, once I'm ready emotionally, I want to make a video about that because I do think that that is a fun way to look at coming back from injury and just how much time and energy and effort it takes. And also that like we don't have to do this alone. So I think there's endless ways you can use animals to bring fun and inspiration.
Thank you, Brian. Great question. I think it's definitely appreciated seeing like a dog in a video. When I do my yoga, the lady that I watch, she has a dog in each of her videos, and it's
Oh,
for
yeah?
whatever reason
You'll have to
comforting to me.
send me who you use because I'm a physical therapist that as soon as it's funny, she's a good physical therapist, but as soon as she started showing her dog, I was like, "Oh, definitely."
Yeah, absolutely. I think the impact that a pet can have is also just like on yourself, having them a part of your bigger part of your life is always nice. Now, you have had a lot of different things you've done, you've looked at a lot of different scenarios. How do you decide what's worth giving time and energy to? We've talked before about the importance of saying no, and how do you go about that?
I like to think that I'm better at it now. Not perfect by any means, but better than I used to be. In the past, I had a lot of trouble saying no, and I think I grew up needing to, say yes to a lot of things that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go be a little clown at a show, but like that's what we needed to do today on this Saturday. So I think I have been a people pleaser for a long time. And I think now I think about the long term benefits for that person and other people that interact with them. And that, I do have value for myself in my own time that I didn't have before. So that helps. I know what I want to do. And I realize that I can only do so much in a day. Yeah, I think realizing that, right? And I think sometimes I do have to say, like, what am I going to get out of this? Like, that's actually convinced me to call people. I used to make time to call like every one of my friends. Now it's like, well, this can be a text conversation. That's okay because I want to get this done. But it's also like, yeah, but we benefit from really being with each other. And if we can't geographically, then maybe I should call them. So I think it goes both ways because it's also made me realize that I need to tell some people like what our relationship is not. And it's not everyone that I've had to do that with, but a few people, I have a really hard time doing that. Or I have to ask someone else to intervene, and can you talk to this person and be the person that they're telling this to right now because this is a lot. Or I have to say to that person, like, I think you're a great person, but I think what you actually need is a therapist. So I don't know. I think I've gotten better at it, but I like being a person that people can come to. I don't know. It's not an easy thing to balance, but I think I'm getting better at it. And it really is. It's just prioritizing because I'm talking about people because that's the most important thing to me. But I mean, housework is like that too. I'm kind of like my mom, and I'm like, I should be doing 5 things at once. But it's like, if you're working on this, it's okay if you do the dishes in an hour. Like, it doesn't have to be right now. No one cares, except for you. So I think just making sure that my priorities, that was way too long of an answer. Sorry.
No, no, that was perfect. Recovering people pleaser, shall we say?
Yeah, maybe. I think so. I feel like I actually I bought a better because it is important to, as Andrew has wisely said, understand who re-energizes you. Like I feel that way about this podcast and this meeting we do every week. I feel inspired coming out of it. I feel curious. I think about my own work in a new way. Like that's a really obvious win for me. But then I think we all have people that we've had in our lives that disproportionately take from us and they absolutely don't care, what's going on. And I find that more draining, I think, because I care about people than the longest chore list.
Absolutely. And it sounds like people have been such a key factor in decisions you made throughout your life. So it's important to protect your energy and yourself in that regard. I think that's very, very fair.
That's a good way of saying it. I agree.
Thank you. Now, we've talked a bit about the history, your history, what you've been doing. I feel like at some point we should touch on, your reflections on Founder's Voyage, but what I thought would be good to ask you about is what you see in the next 5 years for you. Like, what do you think both Founders Voyage, Starfish Strength, maybe something else? What do you see ahead of you?
Now I have to be careful what I say. No, I'm just kidding. I truly don't completely know. I feel like I see, several different threads. I mean, for Starfish Strength, I've been really focused on growing the YouTube channel because I would really like to have enough content on there where I feel like people do have the self help kind of center that I'm building. It could ultimately grow like that starfish leg a little bit unexpectedly. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't completely understand why the recipe stuff has been as successful as it has been because I am not a world class chef by any means. I'm just a cook trying to make things healthier and make healthy cooking more appealing to people. So that's interesting. But I'm kind of willing to explore the legs of that starfish a little bit more. I think for myself, becoming more educated on all levels is definitely part of the picture. And I've toyed with the idea of making kind of like an evergreen program that people could come into, and I mean it would still have the mechanics that other programs have, like, the workouts and building a nutrition plan. But I think at the heart of it, the thing that makes it unique to me is that there really would be a strong focus on building like a resilient mindset, or what to me is a resilient mindset, that helps you think about the barriers to come, not in an anxious way, but in a realistic way. Helps you think about like not just being completely on or completely off, but finding this for life. So I have ideas about that. I've kind of sketched some of it out. I think I'm still pretty open to what that evolution should be. I think as I do grow the YouTube channel and I do start asking people what they want, I'll find some guidance there. That was how this started. So I think that's how it should evolve and continue. But I do know that, it takes time and energy and effort to do all these things. So I really do want to make sure that there's a good population that wants whatever I choose to build. And I feel that way about Founders Voyage too. I feel like we have found like a really good group of people, but I think when we plan a physical meetup, I think that we'll find the strongest of that core of people. And I think we can grow for them, and that will attract more people like them. I think I was really afraid to do that when I was younger. I was abandoned, but not everyone wants what you're building, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point to reiterate. Not everyone wants what you're building, and that's okay. That's fine. If you can find the group that sort of you resonate with and that sees the world or the problems you're facing or whatever the same way you do, I think that's so, so powerful. And it doesn't need to be everyone. It can just be like your small group that are interested in it.
It's pretty special too. I don't think that everybody really finds that.
Yeah, true. I think, in fact, it's less and less common nowadays because of the way that technology's developed. It's actually quite isolating, and people have easy access to very meaning or nearly meaningless friendships. And so it allows people to shut down connections that they otherwise, maybe before modern technology, would have had to like keep working on. And so it does, I think, limit the number of people who can find a community that they can really long term engage with.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we were talking about too, about having like that deeper standard of how you value your time, who you give your time to. If you really have some of those deep connections, I think that, well, I think it's a more fulfilling life for one thing. But I think it does help you with direction too, because those are the people that are going to ask you the best questions and be the most honest with you.
Giovanni has asked a question that I don't think we can give much of an answer to, but I'll just read it out. Is there a period for an in person meetup? I think, as in, is there a date planned? And at the moment, it's still whether or not we're doing something like that is something we want to be talking about. But haven't got any solid plans.
It's in the works.
In the works.
The exploration has begun. It will happen. We don't know when yet, but it will happen.
We will count you in, Giovanni. Thank you. Given all that we've talked about so far in your past and present and what's motivated you, is there a particular problem or area that you think you'd like to put your knowledge and passion to working on or to solving that you haven't had a chance to delve into yet?
I think I just haven't had a chance to do it on the scale that I want to do it, if that makes sense. Because I really do want to help people like become their best problem solver. I want to help them kind of unlock the puzzle of their own motivation. It is somewhat individual. There are definitely some building blocks that I feel are pretty foundational for anyone. But I think that's how we, if we're doing it for the people that we like, that's how we create a better world. I still want to solve that problem, and there's a number of different things that I can dive into that help solve it. I think the thing that I'm not involved in right now that I am missing is really being involved with kids on some level. I always gravitate towards middle school because, and I've worked with high schoolers, I've worked with kids younger than that, but I feel like that's such a pivotal age where you kind of feel like an adult and you have some pretty adult ideas, but you really don't have a map to implement them. And in some ways, that's like a really beautiful thing because you're open to different possibilities and different ways of thinking. The closer we become, to adulthood, I think some of us get really cemented in not like our ideas necessarily, but like in our line of thinking. Like if I am going to work out, this is how I do that. Working out means this to me. It means an hour in the gym, or it means like that I must run 5 miles. Like, I think I really enjoy that coming of independence stage. And I really want to make sure that like, the next generation has a curious mindset, like asks really good questions, like looks at TikTok and says, is this opinion? Is this entertainment? Is this factual?
Absolutely. Now, we do have, as you know, a particular question that we always wrap up with. I found it quite difficult to think of how to reply to the question, even though I've put it to other people like 100 times
Mhm.
now. So I'm now going to put it to you.
It is a hard question.
And I want you to interpret it the way that makes the most sense to you. The question is, what words of wisdom do you want to leave us with today?
I think the reason it's a good question though is because like your answer to it should change, right? Like it's going to be like what has been on your mind. So, along the lines of what I was just talking about, I think it's to make sure that we're staying curious, make sure that we're asking questions. And remember also thought about this a while back that curiosity is not meant to be like a solo sport. It's something that we have to do with other people. I can be curious about what I think about things, but that only goes so far. Really, I should be curious about how things work. And that requires the opinions and expertise and ideas of other people. So just continuing to be curious, asking good questions, and making sure that you're involving other people in that process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nancy. As you know, it's always a pleasure getting to talk with people and going through these sessions with people. And to no surprise at all, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Nancy, and learning from you today. We appreciate your thoughts and everything you've shared with us. Thank you also to everyone who joined us today with a lot of good questions coming from Brian and Giovanni. Thank you for bringing your perspective and energy to today's discussion. Nancy and I and the team behind Founders Voyage feel fortunate to be part of this community with you and for the opportunity to bring this cooperative learning experience each week. We'd love to hear any nominations. It's an odd question to you, Nancy, but obviously, if you have any nominations for future Saturday guests, please let Nancy Nash know.
Oh, I have some. Yeah.
And obviously, anyone listening, you can listen to our edited podcast under Founders Voyage on your favorite podcast platform or directly on our website.
There are people that have far more interesting journeys than I do on there. Definitely
It's hard to beat your journey, I think. Nancy, if people want to reach out to you, contact you, how do you how would you decide they do that?
LinkedIn is always an easy answer. I'm definitely open to that. And then at Starfish Strength is my Instagram handle. It's my YouTube channel. Starfish_strength is TikTok. But definitely check out my YouTube channel. Feel free, to leave me comments. I definitely do check all of this stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing morning, evening, day ahead of you, wherever you are. Thank you once again, Nancy.
Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much, Spencer.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.